Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
A study by ICMR has found that BCG vaccine can kickstart the immune system in an elderly population, kickstart what is called the innate immunity. And this, the researchers concluded, has raised the possibility that the vaccine may be used for infections such as COVID. To talk to us about this, we have with us Professor Gobardhan Das, who is from the Department of Molecular Medicine in JNU. Professor Das was the first person actually to prefer this hypothesis that BCG may have a role in giving some sort of a protection against COVID at a time when it is still a very new virus, but at that point of time in March, it was even more new. Welcome, Dr. Das.
Thanks, Ankita. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah. Sir, if we can start by, if you can tell us a little bit in the beginning about how you think BCG can work in COVID.
As you know, this is we talked about things in early March. In early March from China, when it is being spread out throughout the globe, what we noticed that the countries who are having the BCG immunization, their number of COVID-19 patient as well as the mortality is much less with compared to the countries who did not had the BCG immunization. And later on, we proposed that and we talked about extensively on BCG. And also we published a paper, what are the countries and all the data all together. And also we have shown some of the BCGs are better than some others. And in the meantime, what we found, there are various countries also actually, then started BCG vaccination or revaccination of BCGs. And what we see right now, results coming from the various countries, and that includes India, is results are really encouraging. Mm-hmm. And that is what right at this moment and what we know that.
Did you at any point of time reach out to the government of India on this, and what sort of a response did you get?
Well, in the mid-March, I have written to Science Ministry, I have written to ICMR, I have written to various authorities, and what we should start BCG vaccination or revaccination, at least to those who are in the high-risk group. High-risk group, I mean those who are taking care of the COVID patients and the doctors or elderly people. That's what we wrote to several authorities. And fortunately, I saw this is, although not instantly, but later on, that has been, India also adopted BCG vaccination or revaccination and the clinical trial in many places. Although I didn't know, I'm not involved in that, but India did start BCG vaccination, revaccination. So that's one good thing.
Okay. So do you feel vindicated by the ICMR study? What do you think of the study?
ICMR is, of course, being the health organization, or basically they have right to do all these clinical trials. They are doing clinical trials in many places, and of course with the help of, in some places, at least I know this is with the help of industries, they are doing it. They have their own expertise, and although I was the first person to communicate not only to the ICMR but also various other authorities, I was not involved. I don't know why they didn't call me. They are absolutely their prerogative whether they involve me or they don't involve me. They have their own expertise. They did it. And but one thing I can emphasize and make sure, I was the very few person, if not the first person on this world to propose that BCG has something to do with the COVID-19 severity as well as the mortality.
But sir, when as a lay person, when I read that study, when I go through that study, one question that comes to my mind is that study basically, I'm reading a couple of lines from the study. It says that although our study did not examine the functional effects of these changes in the immune system, our data nevertheless reveal an important role of BCG vaccination in boosting immune responses in the elderly population. Whether this translates to improved protective immunity to non-specific infections like SARS-CoV-2 remains to be determined. So, how then can we say that this actually sort of can be extrapolated to COVID?
So in this study, that what they have shown, the BCG immunization leads to the upregulation or the enhancement of certain adaptive immune responses, and T cells and B cells. They have shown that naive cells, T naive cells goes down, and T effector cells and central memory cells, the number goes up. In this scenario, or for that matter, B cell also, the number goes up. In any condition, one cannot relate with the specific infection. This is I'm talking about total number. Adaptive immunity always works with the antigen specificity. That is what it's called, the specific immunity.
Right.
So therefore, this study, what they are extrapolating, they are trying to say, is a kind of a throwing stone in a jungle. It absolutely doesn't have any relation with COVID-19 with concern to this paper, at least. So basically, I can say if they would not have, vaccinated with BCG, they might have, injected with some other organism. They could have seen the same thing. So there is no, there is no relation with COVID-19. Although, projecting like a COVID-19 immunity, etc., is not.
Okay. So one question that comes about BCG then is that we have been, like we were discussing just before this, we have been vaccinating people with BCG since 1948, yet we have the highest TB burden in the world. So how can a vaccine that doesn't even protect for the disease that it's meant to protect one from, how can it be effective in another disease?
Well, I mean, as you know, the two things I would like to mention here. If you look at we are the second highest COVID-19 occurrence. That's what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Number one, our population is a vast population. So looking at the total number won't much sense, but we have to look at the incidence or the mortality per million. And of course, this is, as you know, this is over a period of time, depending on the various conditions, your immune responses always decline. For example, diabetes, heart disease, or those who are taking the transplant patient, those who are taking steroids, and so on and so forth. So therefore, basically, one can 100% protection, we cannot say that, especially those who have the underlying conditions. Now, those who have the highest, immune response, they are COVID-19, for that matter, any other organism that can be easily eliminated. On the other hand, those who are very less or weak immunity, so they are maybe succumbed with the disease, or maybe they have the high severity of the disease, or those who are the intermediate, they may not show symptoms, but they can be the carrier. So therefore, basically, because of population density and the number of carrier people, more number of carrier people, that may increase the incidence. So that is what one of the reason could be, that we see the very high number of people are being infected. But as you see, the mortality, we are doing absolutely fine. Not only that, I'm not saying only BCG. There could be the various reasons, including one of the hypotheses we keep on saying is the hygiene hypothesis. Basically, countries, those who have less hygiene index, they may be little bit better protective.
Right.
As we are talking about probably the Bihar, just a few minutes back, offline, Bihar may be, as you see, is showing less incidence or less mortality per billion people. That's maybe because of the hygiene index in a community. So therefore, what we are seeing, that we are basically a non-specific immunity, which is, or we call it, trained immunity or the innate memory response that is protecting from COVID-19 and for that matter, various other infections.
Right. I will come back to BCG in a bit because I have a question on Brazil. But before that, sir, if you can very briefly explain these concepts of innate immunity and adaptive immunity.
Okay, so for layman terms, let me explain a little bit. Innate immunity means those who already inherited. That's a very non-specific. Any organism, any infections, any antigens come to your body. So basically, it doesn't have specificity immediately. It grabs it and is eaten up, and then it's been destroyed, killed, which is we call it innate immunity or the inherent immunity. And on the other hand, the adaptive immunity is provided by lymphocytes. There are two major lymphocytes in the body. We call it T cells and B cells. They only look antigen, those only instructed by something called antigen presenting cell. Mm-hmm. That means any infection, when it is infected, that specific antigen is displayed on a surface of a cell, and that is being recognized by the T cells and B cells. That means T cells or B cells are very antigen specific. So therefore, for their functioning, what we need the antigen specificity. When we are talking about this paper, as you see, this paper, they injected BCG or they immunized with the BCG. So there is no COVID-19 here. So therefore, the elevated T cells and B cells are in no way the COVID-19 specific. Doesn't matter how many B cells and T cells is upregulated or enhanced or proliferated. It doesn't matter at all unless it has the antigen specificity. Here in this case, there is no antigen specificity as COVID-19 is not been exposed.
Right. So, but on BCG, like you said that, yes, we have our deaths per million is low, much lower than the global average. But Brazil also has a very robust BCG program. And Brazil's deaths per million, I was just looking at the data, it's actually more than even US. It's, I think, somewhere around 744. Ours is 84. Ours is very low. But how do you explain that then?
Well, I mean, in our paper, as you see, we explain some of the BCG strain. Okay, let me first tell you, this is not only the one thing we are talking about. Many things, it depends. One of the major thing is, of course, we are talking about non-specific immunity or innate immunity or the trained immunity. And not only trained immunity, but many other things is actually depends. For example, exposure, for example, the underlying other diseases, other conditions, and the age. There are many things, it depends. However, I can tell you another very important observation what we made in our paper is that all the BCG strains are not equally potent. So there are certain strains which are very protective and certain strains are not. And in fact, another paper, we are just writing it, very soon we'll submit. We have shown the BCG, those strains, those who lost many number of T cell epitopes, they are even better protective. What it means is basically the more of innate immunity, better the protection by the BCG. So therefore, basically what kind of BCG strains are being used that also matters a lot.
What are T cell epitopes?
The T cell epitopes means T cell recognizes the antigen with a certain length of peptide. Peptide means the part of the protein, and that is we call the epitope. The one T cell has its own receptor to look at the antigen. The antigen portion is looked at, that is called epitope.
Right. So in your proposal that you had given to the government, you had talked about a recombinant BCG vaccine, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So how would that have worked? Can you explain that a bit?
Definitely. What I was proposing all the way, basically is, as you see, BCG is data coming from the various places can give up to 70 to 80% protection. But BCG, as always I mentioned, is giving the protection by non-specific immunity. Can we make it specific and much more potent? How do we do that? Basically, we wanted to harness the non-specific immunity or innate immunity provided by BCG. And then on top of that, we wanted to make it some kind of specific immunity. How do you do that? As you know, so specific immunity means adaptive immunity. This means B cells and T cells activations are all required. So therefore, what we wanted to do we wanted to make a recombinant BCG that expresses the antigen from the COVID-19. What is the choice of antigen? The antigen choice will be those antigens which can provide host protection. That means giving the T cell activation and the B cell epitope, and that gives you the antibody that gives the host protection. So basically, we wanted to pick up the antigen or the epitope from COVID-19 and then put it in the BCG. And we are not going to put it straight in a BCG. We have to engineer that because of epitope, then with stitching. And then at the N-terminal, I should not say N-terminal, that's a scientific term. For the layman's, basically, at the one end, we have to put some kind of secretory signal so that it will be readily accessible to your immune system. So that kind of engineering thing we proposed to the government. And our proposal, actually, why it is superior, let me tell you. First thing, we are harnessing the innate immunity provided by the BCG. As we all know, BCG is one of the potent adjuvant. So basically, for antigen delivery or immune response generation, so that BCG also helps in that. And also, because we are taking the antigen from the COVID-19, that will give you the specific immunity. So basically, we are covering both specific immunity as well as the innate immunity provided by the BCG. So therefore, it will give you the long-term protection. And I was proposing, and to the best of our knowledge, probably one dose or at the most another dose of booster should work for the lifetime. And in this respect, I can tell you some of the examples. For example, your flu vaccine, one has to take every year, right? So basically, although they call it, because of change in the antigen, etc., but truth of the matter is the immune responses does not stay long because of the weak your adjuvant capacity. And
because the strain changes, the flu vaccine.
Yes, the strain changes. That's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
But as you know, so basically, from our experience, from what we proposed, they may give you the long-term memory response, and can be, it should protect for the lifelong. Mm-hmm. Second thing, I would like to, because it is coming, as you see, various adenovirus-based vaccines. As we all know, adenovirus also comes with some kind of your trade-off. That's because many of the adenovirus, they do the demyelinization, which is basically, at least we saw some of the cases where the patient demyelinating disease has been
So
shown.
basically, nerve transmission is disrupted.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So if in that short period of time, nerve transmission is affected, think about in long term, in the though in 10 years or 15 years, or for that matter, even the longer time. So basically, although we may see the safe for temporarily, in my personal opinion, this is of course my personal opinion, I have my little reservation against long-term safety.
Okay.
So for that, what we thought, basically our approach probably gives you the better or superior immune responses. And BCG, as you know, has been 100 years already been tested.
Right. So is this sort of work with a recombinant BCG vaccine, testing it against COVID-19, is that happening anywhere right now in the world?
So far, we do not know. Basically, this is the hypothesis we are proposing, and we, although we are working on it, and somehow, because of I love my country, this is my motherland, and I proposed it when I did not get. I was vocal about it, and so that I get the attention, we can work it out. We can work it out fast. And many of the scientists, they do not really disclose, and we also do not disclose many things. And that's because confidentiality. But I do not have any other intention other than getting in the funds and then work out, and then as without losing time. Faster is better. If I can provide that vaccine strain to my motherland, to my country, that is what my intention is. That is what I keep on saying, Jay, in various interviews. Yes, this is the thing should work, and why should it work? So that is that at least some people can hear it, and then they really give an attention.
You were talking about the hygiene hypothesis.
Yeah.
There is a CSIR paper that has just come out that actually makes this point that India may have fared better than other countries. The paper actually makes the point that countries which have low hygiene standards have fared better during the pandemic. What do you think of that paper?
See, this is if you look at in March also, March, April, June, where I kept on saying in various media, there's a hygiene hypothesis, which is actually I was talking about it.
Yeah.
Because of we are continuously exposed to the various organisms because of their PAM. PAM means pathogen associated molecular pattern, which is actually activates the innate immune system. So because of exposure of the various PAMs or the innate activation of the innate immune responses, the people, those who are residing that in less hygiene index or less hygienic places, that always have the little bit elevated immune responses. If you look at it, so that actually in the first exposure itself, that gives it the protection. So therefore, those who are having the less hygiene are always little better in protecting various organisms, not only COVID-19 actually.
Right. So moving away from BCG a little bit, sir, about the course of the pandemic in the country, there was this super model that was developed by people from ISI, IITs, and several other institutes, which said that we are actually we are over the peak. The worst is over, and the peak was in September, and we might be looking at the pandemic coming to an end sometime in February 2021. What do you think of that, sir?
Well, I mean, peak is over. First thing, at least in biological things, many of the mathematical model, it really doesn't work. So it doesn't work. It doesn't mean this model is wrong. It doesn't work because of various variables.
Right.
And if says the pandemic is over, and peak was in September, I just saw this as news this morning. That once again the infection is surging in US. once again infection is in Europe,
Yeah.
they are planning to close and lock down again.
Yeah.
So basically, the model what we are talking about is a model done by the mathematicians and the statisticians. It's not that experts from the microbiologists or epidemiologists. So basically, always something called prediction. This is the predicted.
Right.
How far it will be truth, nobody knows. Another thing I can tell you, yesterday only I saw some news. Delhi is going to the third, third peak.
Yeah.
Basically, the first peak, second peak, third peak. And today, probably Delhi is around 6,000 cases, which is the highest number.
Yeah.
So basically, the mathematical model is working, will be working. There's no guarantee.
Right. What do you think? So one of the things that we've been told right from the beginning is that cold winter is going to be the real test. And also all these countries that are now seeing a resurgence, many of them are actually, temperatures are getting getting lower there. So what do you think lies in store for India? Is it possible to sort of...
Well, I mean, it's only we can guess. But in India also, when the winter season comes in, basically it's not only the flu. There are many other diseases comes in. Basically, flu is much more rampant during the winter season. Basically, as we know, COVID-19 is also a flu. Probably we can see many more incidences in COVID-19 cases. And not only that, and in India, in various parts, like in specifically Delhi, as you know, right now, we are having huge pollution. So basically that also maybe the cofactor for the highest incidence or more incidences of COVID-19. So,
talking about flu, there are some reports that the flu vaccine also provides some sort of protection against COVID. Is that possible?
Well, there are some reports, but specifically there is no confirmative reports, whatever. But it is possible. That's because, as you see, this is once again, if it is protection is given because of non-specific immunity. As you know, every organism has, as I said, something called PAMP, pathogen-associated molecular pattern, which is the ligand for the receptor for the innate immune response. So basically, if their innate immune response is, elevated, they are, better innate immune responses, they can give you the protection. That could be true. However, so far, we do not know whether there is any specificity in it or what is the statistical significance in it. We do not know.
Okay. How then, so this may be a very silly question, but how then is BCG a more promising candidate to develop into a vaccine than, say, the flu vaccine against COVID-19?
Well, I mean, that's because we know the BCG has the strong PAMP, pathogen-associated molecular pattern, as there are many papers coming out or last 2-3 years coming out, and they're saying that indeed BCG can mount the very good trained immunity. And actually in early childhood, when BCG is being immunized, this is because of the epigenetic changes. This trained immunity, we get it, that's because of epigenetic changes in the stem cell-like places, and that carries on throughout the life. So basically, because of strong PAMP or strong innate immune activation, that gives you the better protection. Whereas the flu vaccine may not be that strong innate immune, providing that kind of strong innate immune responses. So although there is no study, so far head-to-head comparison, there is no study, but nobody tried to look at it. But this could be the reason. And everybody knows the BCG is a very good adjuvant. Because BCG is better adjuvant, that's because of it is better innate immune activation parameters. So it has better PAM.
Right. And sir, given the current vaccine landscape in the world, how far do you reasonably see, how long would it be before there's a vaccine?
Yeah, as you know, there are several of them are in right now in pipeline, especially in phase 2, phase 3. Basically,
which do you think is the most promising, sir?
I'm better not to ask me. I know that 2 of them are, but I don't want to name them. Well, I mean, but they are promising. At least they are promising with the data. I should say, for very short period. As I mentioned, some of the adenovirus-based vaccines, they give you the promise for a short period, but that doesn't mean in long period they are where.
That's the Oxford vaccine you're talking about?
Well, Oxford vaccine, one of them. So as you saw already, we know that it gives some kind of demyelination disease.
Right.
So basically, it can give you the short-term protection. Whether it is giving a long-term protection, we do not know, number one. Number two, we do not know the safety for the long-term, cases.
Right.
So, although it can give you the protection for a limited period of time.
Okay. My last question, sir. Without a vaccine, suppose we come to a situation where none of these vaccines that are currently, we are thinking early next year, say the early next year deadline is not met. Then how do you see the pandemic panning out? How much longer?
Well, I mean, without vaccine, so basically, this is going to stay. So basically, even if we get vaccine, it will take long time for eradication. Example is polio. Polio eradication, how long it took? It's a long time.
Polio is a 90% efficacy vaccine. We are talking about a 50% efficacy vaccine here.
Yeah. So basically, it will take a long time. Even if we get 100% efficacy, so basically it will take a long time to eradicate the disease. This is going to stay for long.
Right.
I don't see this as, and second thing, even if we get the vaccine in early 2021,
right.
So how long it will take to vaccinate a vast country like India, 130 crore people?
The government says it will take a year.
Yes, it may take a year, but when we go in the field, then we will see.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Das, for speaking to us. That was a very illuminating conversation. Thank you. And thank you for watching the Print YouTube channel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.